PodcastCoug Season 6, Episode 5.
You're listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. And now, here is your host, PodcastCoug.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PodcastCoug. I am James Laurie, the PodcastCoug, and you are listening to the PodcastCoug, where we're all things Cougar football, 30 minutes of Coug talk, and we're talking about our loss to Utah down at Salt Lake and our upcoming game against Cal in Berkeley on Saturday. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PodcastCoug. Okay, it was Utah 24, Washington State 13, Laura and Bhorgi both out, both our best guys out, and it's not like we have a lot of depth, right? And so, hey, that's an excuse, but you know what? From our defense, they played a big part. Like we're talking about, our defense did really good, and we're going to talk about the run and shoot specifics later on as far as what's working, what's not, and the run and shoot later on in this episode of the PodcastCoug. So let's talk about our defense, and a bunch of credit goes to our defense. They played well. They, really almost enough to win against Utah. And although the offense they just couldn't perform at all. So defense played great, right? I mean, you end up forcing 7 fumbles and recover 3 of them, and the offense they just couldn't execute right on offense. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but simply they just could not execute and couldn't go down and put any points on the board. But really, right, I thought the defense played great. I mean, they really did. They looked fast and they were flying around. And I mean, it really helped that Utah's quarterback couldn't hit anything. I mean, he couldn't even go to the fairgrounds and throw one of those darts at the balloons and pop the balloon like your 4-year-old can. So, he's just not having a good day as far as the Utah quarterback, but certainly played well enough to win. And second half was the second half. And here we go again. That second half, the inability offensively to get anything done. And we've seen this all season long, just about the second half against Utah, where, the numbers in the second half on that game, we just had 106 total yards. We had 13 rushing yards for an average of 0.9 yards a carry. 0.9 yards a carry was our average, right? So we were 2 out of 7 on third down conversions, and we just ran 31 total plays, and the average yards per play in the second half was 3.4. And, we had 2 turnovers. I mean, Rolovich was very critical on the offense afterwards, and he basically said there's no explosiveness to our play. It's, these 4-yard runs and these 4-yard passes. And I thought, this, we were supposed to get things done. He's the run and shoot guru, right? I mean, right? Didn't that's how Pat Chun hired him as a run and shoot guru. I mean, you're supposed to put up a bunch of points, right? And you really haven't all season long, even last year. And so on the flip side, and we're going to taking a look at the USC game, that we just got crushed in the second half, right? Down in the Coliseum. Actually, that was in Pullman with the USC game. Well, Delora was out. He wasn't in the second half. No Delora, right? Not only didn't Delora wasn't in the second half, but we didn't have Bhorgi either. So, obviously we need both of those guys healthy, running, playing in all 4 quarters. Don't get me wrong, right? McIntosh is great. He's good, right? Sad that we don't have the depth that we can just reload and this is technically what Leach has left us. I mean, there's some guys, there are guys that are from the transfer portals, just recently, but most of these guys were recruited by Leach, and I think we're going to be okay. But the big key for me is Delora, and Utah had a really good pass rush, and let's give them credit, but I think it's all about who's running the run and shoot. And we're going to talk about that in the second half of the PodcastCoug. So changing subjects real quick. October 18th is soon approaching, and hey, there's going to be 4 options. Let's just lay it all out. October 18th, 4 options. Rolo either gets vaccinated, Rolo doesn't get vaccinated, and they fire him on October 18th in the middle of the season, or Rolo doesn't get vaccinated, but they wait until November 27th, that's the day after the Apple Cup, and then fire him. The question is, what if we beat the Huskies? How do you fire a coach after you beat the Huskies at the Apple Cup? Of course, the odds are we're probably not, but chances are, who knows? So that's the third option is wait until after the AC and fire him. And the fourth is he gets vaccinated and he still gets fired on the 27th of November. So which one will it be? I personally think, now a lot of people think he's just going to get fired not get vaccinated. A lot of people think he's just not going to get vaccinated. When it comes down to putting bread on the table, right? Your family, your kids, I think it comes down to salary, and that's a big salary to give up. So I think he's going to get vaccinated, but I do expect him to be terminated on the 27th of the day after. Now, this isn't all about termination here. It's just, are we going to win 7 to 8 games every year? All right. And that's what we want. We want a coach that we're going to be winning, and not just a 6-win season and go into a bowl game. We're talking about 7 or 8 wins pretty much year after year. That's what we're looking for. And of course, and there are some coaches. Last episode on the podcast, we did talk about 5 great coaches in the country right now that would be good hires, by the way, if you didn't catch episode 4. Hey, we're going to talk about Cal, the Golden Bears in Berkeley, on the second half of the Podcast Coug next, coming up.
Hey, Coug fans. You're podcasting with James Laurie and the Podcast Coug Radio Network. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show, featuring all things Cougar football in Washington State. To help you get through the week, hit the subscribe button or check us out on iTunes, the App Store, iOS, Google Play, Stitcher, or at PodcastCoug.com.
The real estate agent you work with matters, and a great agent helps you own the home of your dreams. And your dreams come true with James Laurie at Coldwell Banker Bain, representing clients like you 24/7. From condos to colonials and everything in between. If you're selling, buying, need a price analysis, or just a contractor referral, ask James, winner of the 2015 through 2019 International Coldwell Banker Diamond Award, with dozens and dozens of 5-star Zillow reviews and Seattle Magazine's 5-star award winner for 2018 through 2020. James Laurie, Coldwell Banker Bain, at 425-466-3672 or jameslaurie.net. Rock solid results.
You're listening to the Podcast Coug.
2 running backs in with the quarterback. Signals called. All man in motion going through to the right side. Handoff wings out to the right side. Touchdown, Washington State.
You are listening to the Podcast Coug.
Welcome back to the second half of the Podcast Coug. I am James Laurie, the Podcast Coug, where we're all things Cougar football, all things Cougs. And here we go. It's Cal, Saturday at Memorial Stadium, Berkeley, 2:30 on the Pac-12 networks. Homecoming and family weekend down at Berkeley. It would be fun to be there. I've never been to Strawberry Canyon before. I would love to go. I almost went this year. I said to myself, if we beat Utah, I'm on my way. I'm going to go see Cal, Memorial Stadium, and Strawberry Canyon. Guess what? We lost to Utah, so nope, that's it. Not going. But anyway, here we go. It's Cal. Cal has always been tough forever, ever, decades and decades and decades. They're never easy with Cal. Now, before we get into that, Washington State announced, you've heard this, that Washington State, they've announced just this week that 12 and older, if you're going to a Coug game in Pullman, like the Oregon State game coming up, you've got to provide proof of vaccination or an FDA-approved negative COVID test three days prior on a test before you head to the game, before you can get inside the game. So that begins on October 9th. That's that Oregon State game. So you just got to show proof of vaccinating card or a test. And then there's going to be kiosk locations in the Cub and the Beasley Coliseum and Cougville down at Rogers Field. And there's going to be like 4 kiosks around the stadium 3 hours prior to kick. So just to set you up, right? So you're no surprises. We don't know if you can just scan it on your card, have it on your phone, on your card, have it in your notes in your card digitally. We don't know. I think that's going to be accepted, right? This is not the FAA. We're not, it's not on, it's not the airport situation. So I think this is I would imagine digital image would be fine. Students that have a sports pass that are compliant with the university, they're going to be able to get in easy with the Cougar card. And so that's just the update. Hey, Rolo said some positive update, right, on injuries. Laura and Bhorgi both could be healthy in time for Cal on Saturday. So I'm thinking, yes, both of them are going to be back, which is just great. And, there's just a great chance. Laura injured his leg late in the first half of the USC game, and then Bhorgi was injured with the first half in the Utah game last week. It didn't return. Bhorgi was wearing a sleeve on his elbow. So just this is just huge that both of them are going to be back. Another update, Brandon Gray, 4th year wide receiver who was shot in Pullman last Saturday morning. And we don't know why he wasn't down at Utah, why he wasn't on the bus, why he wasn't down in Salt Lake City. He's recovered. He's out of ICU. He's recovering, which is very, very good. The prayers have been answered in that respect. And so keep praying for Brandon Gray. I'm sure he's had just a horrific time with what's happened. And the recovery process is probably going to be very long. Okay, so Cougs 112th in all of FBS in plays of 20 yards or more. Okay, and that's it. We are almost in last. The only thing that we had this season was 40 yard. It was over 40 yards, which was Bhorgi's 64-yard touchdown run against Utah State. We're leading the country in a lack of plays that are over 40 yards, or actually over 20 yards or more. And we are 112th of all of FBS teams. 112th. We just don't have plays over 20 yards. We had, remember that 64-yard Bhorgi run, and that's it. Cal has won the last 5 games. Okay, 102-year-old rivalry. It's really not a rivalry, but we've been playing him for over 100 years. Chase Garbers, he's already hit over 1,000 passing yards in 4 games this season, including a season high of 319 last week in that overtime loss to the Huskies, 31-24 in that overtime loss, down 7 in OT. Cal drove to the Washington 2-yard line where Damian Moore fumbled on the goal line, preventing the Bears from potentially either tying the score with a PAT or just going for the road win with a 2-pointer. And nope, Cal actually came out of the game relatively healthy, but they lost, and Cougs not so much, as we lost. Bhorgi sprained his left wrist, and also 3 of our safeties left the game. So we only had 2 remaining healthy safeties on our roster, and that's just scary. Bhorgi rushed for 42 yards, 6 carries. His longest was 18 yards before he got injured on the first snap of the second quarter. Deion McIntosh and that Wisconsin's Nakia Watson combined 60 yards on 14 carries over 3 quarters. And if Laura plays, it's really... with the run and shoot, this is going to be huge. We're going to talk about this now. If Bhorgi is healthy and plays, I think it's going to be great because McIntosh, Nakia Watson, and I think we just got to get these guys healthy, get playing all 4 quarters. Again, if DeLaura doesn't play, we've got Garantano, but I don't think you want to go with Garantano if DeLaura does not play. We got to think of the ifs. I'm thinking DeLaura's in and Bhorgi's in. If DeLaura doesn't play, and I think it's I think it's a very great chance he's going to play, right? But if he doesn't, we're putting in Cam Cooper. Okay, why? We've seen Garantano. He doesn't work effectively with the run and shoot. Cam and Cooper has not played 4 quarters for Washington State, and he's been with us forever under Leach, right? So like to see what Cooper can do, seriously, just because we've seen the work of Garantano. We've seen enough. Simply can't, we can't have these 4 yards passing and 4 yards running. You've got to be able to stretch the field. You've got to be able to go vertical, and you're not seeing, this is not AG, right? This isn't Anthony Gordon, right? We don't have an AG anymore. In fact, we simply don't see any rhythm or solid offensive performance out of Garantano in terms of downs and big plays. You've got to let their defense at least respect you deep, but when they just roll their defense up and blast everybody from 10 yards on, that really it makes it tough and it's downright embarrassing. So in that case, if DeLaura can't go, I'd like to see Cam and Cooper get a shot for the entire game, and back to our defense. I'd also like to see our defense, what they can do. They're second in the Pac-12 with 10 takeaways from the first 4 games. That's 4 picks and 6 fumbles. They forced 8 fumbles last year. That their number 1 in the nation was 6 fumble recoveries. So they're turning the football over, which is good for the offense. It's giving you extra possessions. And in this football game with Cal, extra possessions are going to be they're going to be the difference maker. So, Garantano just doesn't seem to have the pocket presence and the awareness factor, and he can't get away from a rush like DeLaura does, right? It's very obvious. So let's see if DeLaura plays the whole entire game. I bet you all of a sudden we're going to have a better second half, right? The thing about Garantano is that he was, when he was over at Tennessee in the SEC, he really had good guys around him. He had solid guys, which tends to make you look a little better, right? A lot better. So if you don't have a good line in front of you, you're not going to necessarily perform. Plus, I believe this run and shoot offense is just not in his DNA, right? DeLaura's been running the run and shoot forever. But the thing I've noticed that he's not comfortable in the offense. He's just not. We're talking Garantano. He's not comfortable in this offense right now. And so he's holding on to the ball, right? He doesn't get rid of the ball really quickly. He hangs on the ball, and he seems to be overwhelmed, and he doesn't, get those opportunities that DeLaura gives you the opportunities. He knows, he scrambles, and DeLaura takes off a little too quickly while sitting in the pocket, where Garantano just sits in the pocket forever. And sooner or later, you're going to get, it's going to get you. So you better get your freshman year to your, if Garantano has had it all the way from his freshman year to his senior year, and typically you're going to be improved quite a bit. We're not seeing that. It's not that difficult. Don't get me wrong. He's a great arm. He's got a great arm. He's tall. He's a good quarterback. But he makes good checks, but he seems to get rid of the ball. And almost like, I don't want to hang on to the pocket too long, so I'm just going to throw the ball, get rid of the ball, and that's fine when you're going up to against a weaker non-con. But when you're standing back to back and you're looking at SC or Cal or Utah, and you make those reads and the right adjustments and the right reads, and reading the offense while the receivers are running their routes and the quarterbacks are dropping back, and it takes a lot of timing and skill, and you just don't see that right now with Garantano. There's a lot of stuff going on in 3 seconds with the run and shoot. And what's interesting is that there's only one team of all of college football right now at the Power 5 level, running the run and shoot. And I mean, we talked about this last year on season 5 about Rolo's first year with the run and shoot and what is the run and shoot. And really, there is no play call when you're running a route. I mean, the play is called on the receiver on the fly. The receiver on the fly makes a decision, and which route the run is based on is what the defense is playing you. And then, the same thing with the quarterback. In 3 seconds, you have to process what he thinks the receiver is going to do. And, I think that you saw this, this display at the end of the game last week with Garantano clearly was throwing the ball out onto the sideline. And I think it was always like he was going down the field. Seriously, Garantano is not equipped to run the run and shoot. It's very simple. I mean, it's very obvious. You just can't be new to the run and shoot, and it just seems like an offense that's outdated. I mean, this is not a common offense. It's too much is depending on what you're thinking on the fly, and you've got to be massively difficult. It has to be massively difficult for a quarterback and a wide receiver to do that in 3 or 3.5 seconds. That's about the time you only have, and then the ball is snapped and the quarterback has to make a decision. And so from a defensive perspective, you have to be physical at the point of attack and read the rest of the routes, because that makes it tougher for the quarterback while you're jamming up your hands and putting pressure on. So, no, seriously, the run and shoot is not easy unless you have the right quarterback. And that's where de Laura shines, right? So he's been running this offense, the run and shoot, ever since Pop Warner football, right? Probably since junior high. In fact, he has since junior high school. So, if you're not on the same page, if you're not reading it correctly, if you're not doing it on the fly, you're going to have an issue. Remember, we're 8 games into the Rolovich season, and you could just throw last year's season away, throw it out of the window because of the COVID setback. So really, we're really halfway through Rolovich's first year, and you hear everybody talk about getting the right people on the right bus. I've talked about that. We got to get the right players, the right coach on the right bus heading in the right direction. But a lot of this happens to do with the experience of this run and shoot thing, And the good news is not a lot of people do this offense. So it's a bit tougher to defend, and you have to defend it. And if you haven't defended, it's because you don't see it. And the bad news is that it's all timing, and it's getting everybody on the same page. And if you're not on the same page, you've got a problem. You've got an issue if you're not on the same page. And so guess what? You're not on the same page right now because you don't have the right guy that needs to run it, which the right guy is de Laura. And I mean, de Laura makes the whole thing happen. And I just don't. We're even questioning the offense of de Laura if playing the whole time. I mean, I might be wrong, but it looks like on that USC game, the first half. Take a look at that first half. I mean, right? We were up 14-0, and that's what happens when de Laura is in, and we have a chance to win, and you can see the players play. And de Laura, he is special. He's not Anthony Gordon. I've said this before. I think Anthony Gordon is my favorite Washington State quarterbacks in the history of Washington State. But, but de Laura, back to, Jaden, he's awesome. He's absolutely fun to watch. And we need to see more of him. And basically, de Laura gives us a chance to win, whether it's running the air raid or the run and shoot or the wishbone. I don't care what we're running. I think we need to run with de Laura to run our offense. And again, if he doesn't come in and start against Cal, we got to give Cam Cooper all 4 quarters. At least give him a chance. We've already seen the other option, which isn't working right. All right, 4-star quarterback. There is a 4-star quarterback, Justin Martin, that recently decommitted from Cal. So 4 days after a 4-star running back, Jaden Ott announced his decommitment to Cal, they lost a 4-star quarterback as well, Justin Martin. So there's some very, very unfortunate recruiting things going on with Cal right now. They're losing some good people. And by the way, Justin Martin, that great quarterback, I think he's like number 21st in the nation right now for the class of 2022. Highly touted out of Inglewood High School. Currently holds offers from like UCLA and Ole Miss and Michigan. So he just said, nope, sorry, I'm not going to Cal. So, and then he was supposed to replace Chase Garbers, so not good for Cal. And speaking about not good, did you hear about Tucson? What's going on in Tucson at University of Arizona football? They're holding tryouts right now for walk-ons in the middle of their football season. Right now, they're holding walk-on tryouts, and that is scary. That is very sad. Now, Pac-12, we've talked about Pac-12 in a whole. It's really unfortunate that we're not strong as like we used to be, but it's very scary, and that's what it is. But we need to make those changes for Washington State to never get to that Joe Avezzano years at Oregon State, right? Or I think Arizona has lost 16 or 17 games in a row. We don't want to go there. We need to make some changes, right? We talked about that. Hey, that's it for episode 5 of the 6th season of the Podcast Coug. Thank you so much for listening. We got Cal on Saturday, 2:30, Pac-12 Networks. Be sure to check out our brand new website, PodcastCoug.com. It's Washington State at Cal on Saturday. God bless, and go Cougs.
You've been listening to the Podcast Coug with your host, James Laurie. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. This has been a presentation of the Podcast Coug Radio Network. Find us at PodcastCoug.com.